Have you ever wondered why, despite all your efforts, your biggest dreams seem to slip through your fingers? Why, at times, are we our own Achilles heel, the biggest obstacle on the path to what we most desire? The key to unraveling this enigma might lie in an unexpected place: the animal kingdom. Imagine a tireless builder, a small, dedicated engineer of nature, who masterfully constructs its dwelling. But what if that same passion for building, taken to an extreme, could turn against itself? Join us on this fascinating journey to decipher human self-sabotage, inspired by the intriguing and paradoxical wisdom of an animal that, while building its dam, can inadvertently flood its own home. Self-sabotage is far more than just a bad habit. It's a subtle yet powerful shadow lurking in the deepest corners of our minds, manifesting in ways so veiled we barely perceive them. It's not an external enemy to be fought, but rather a complex tangle of behaviors, thoughts, and emotions, sometimes conscious, sometimes entirely unconscious, that paradoxically prevent us from achieving our own goals, undermine our well-being, and push us away from the happiness we so desperately seek. It's as if, while one part of us ardently craves success, fulfillment, and plenitude, another part, operating behind the scenes, pulls the rug out from under us, tearing down what we've just built. In daily life, self-sabotage reveals its many faces. Have you ever found yourself indefinitely postponing that crucial task for your career, even knowing it's a game-changer for your advancement? Or perhaps, faced with the opportunity for a promising new relationship, you found a myriad of excuses not to commit, or even provoke conflicts that led to its demise. These are just a few manifestations of this invisible web that binds us. Consider those climactic moments when you're about to finalize a significant project, and suddenly, you're overcome by an irresistible urge to get distracted, to scroll through social media, or to find flaws and imperfections where, rationally, they don't exist. Or, even more subtly, when a sincere compliment about one of your achievements makes you deeply uncomfortable, leading you to downplay your own merit with phrases like, "Oh, it was just luck," or "anyone could have done that." Self-sabotage feeds on the fear of success, the ingrained belief of not being worthy of good things, or even a strange, morbid familiarity with failure that, however painful, might seem safer and more predictable than the vast, uncertain territory of triumph. It manifests in vicious cycles that repeat with startling precision. The person who consistently loses a job just before a significant promotion. The brilliant student who, despite all the preparation, freezes up and draws a blank during the crucial exam. Or the individual who, upon approaching desired happiness in a relationship, creates unnecessary arguments and discords that lead to its breakdown. These are vivid examples of how self-sabotage operates, often so intrinsically woven into our being that we mistake it for bad luck, destiny, or an inherent lack of ability. It's crucial to understand that self-sabotage is not, at its core, a sign of weakness or ill intent, but rather a complex psychological mechanism. It's frequently rooted in past traumatic experiences, in dysfunctional attachment patterns developed in childhood, or in limiting beliefs absorbed from the environment. It acts as an archaic defense system that prevents us from stepping out of our comfort zone, even if that zone is, ironically, one of deep discomfort and stagnation. It's that persistent inner voice whispering, "You're not good enough. This is too good to be true. It'll go wrong," or "Why bother trying? You'll fail anyway." Recognizing this voice, identifying its patterns, and understanding its roots is the first and most challenging step to disarm this trap that we, unknowingly, have built for ourselves. It's an invitation to deeper self-observation. In the heart of rivers, streams, and lakes of temperate forests lives one of the most ingenious and industrious builders in the animal kingdom, the beaver. More than a common rodent, it is a natural architect and engineer, revered for its unparalleled ability to erect complex dams and underwater lodges. The beaver is, par excellence, a symbol of hard work, persistence, ingenuity, and a remarkable capacity for adaptation and environmental modification. Equipped with its powerful incisors, which grow continuously and are sharpened by use, and its flat, scaly tail, which functions as a rudder and support, it fells trees, transports branches, mud, and stones, shaping the aquatic environment according to its vital needs. The beaver's instinct is primal and powerful, to create a secure habitat protected from terrestrial predators like wolves and coyotes, and to ensure deep waters that allow access to its submerged lodge and food caches during the harsh winter months when the surface freezes. The dams it builds are true feats of natural engineering capable of dramatically altering the course of rivers, raising water levels, and consequently creating extensive wetlands and entire ecosystems that benefit a myriad of other species, from fish and birds to amphibians. The beaver's dedication to its work is tireless. It works relentlessly day and night, driven by a biological program that compels it to build, maintain, and perfect its structure. However, it is precisely in this same powerful constructive instinct that a fascinating peculiarity lies, an intrinsic irony of its nature. A beaver, in its excess of zeal and efficiency, can occasionally build a dam so immense and effective that it ends up causing excessive and uncontrolled flooding. This surplus of passion for its work, this unrestricted dedication to construction, can result in the inundation of vast forest areas, drowning, and killing trees that once served as a vital food source or building material. In more extreme scenarios, the very habitat it worked so hard to create can become unsustainable and uninhabitable for itself and its family, due to its own successful constructive effort. It's crucial to understand that the beaver does not act this way out of malice, a conscious desire for destruction or incompetence. On the contrary, it is merely following its genetic program, responding to an innate and unstoppable urge to build and ensure its survival. The dam is for it, its life, its fortress, its security. But the line that separates beneficial and sustainable construction from excessive construction that leads to harm is thin, and the beaver, in its purely instinctive wisdom, doesn't always have the capacity to perceive it. It lacks the long-term consciousness or the ability to foresee all the consequences of its actions, unlike a human being. This paradoxical action of building with such dedication, and as a consequence, generating a destructive side effect for part of its own environment and way of life, is precisely what makes the beaver such a potent and visual mirror for human self-sabotage. It shows us, simply and brutally honestly, that even the most well-intentioned actions, the most dedicated efforts, when taken to an extreme, without due perception of their long-term consequences or without a strategic course correction, can indeed turn against us. The beaver is, therefore, the personification of creative and productive energy that, without a conscious break or a new strategic direction, can inadvertently transform into a self-destructive force. The vivid image of the beaver, with its dam serving as vital shelter and, at the same time, a potential flood threat, offers a strikingly precise and powerful metaphor for human self-sabotage. Just as the beaver is driven by an ancestral instinct to build, we human beings are propelled by an undeniable inner force to create, to innovate, to seek success, to build meaningful relationships, to forge fulfilling careers, and ultimately to shape lives that bring us satisfaction and purpose. We have our ambitious life projects, our most cherished dreams, and high aspirations, and we dedicate considerable energy, time, resources, and passion to building them, brick by brick. However, the surprising similarity with the beaver lies in the fact that at times, our own ingrained behavioral patterns, our recurring thoughts, and our deepest emotions, which can be metaphorically called our internal dams, become so complex so deeply rooted and so automated that without the slightest conscious perception, they end up flooding or severely harming them. Self-sabotage is then this profoundly paradoxical action we build arduously with one hand, while unconsciously and sometimes compulsively we undo with the other. Imagine again the beaver that, driven by its instinct for security, accumulates more and more branches, mud, and stones to strengthen its dam, but doesn't perceive, or doesn't have the capacity to process, that the water level is rising dangerously, drowning the trees that not only provide crucial food, but also material for its future constructions. Similarly, a human being might, for example, dedicate themselves tirelessly to achieving a grand professional goal. But at the peak of success, when a promotion is guaranteed or a revolutionary project is completed, they begin to doubt their own ability, procrastinate critical tasks, or create unnecessary conflicts with colleagues and superiors. This is the moment when they unconsciously undermine the very path they built with so much sweat and dedication. Self-sabotage is, in essence, the invisible dam we build in our minds, with the waters of our own emotions and thoughts. It can manifest as the overwhelming fear of success which makes us retreat just as we're about to reap the rewards of great effort. It can be the compulsive need for control, which prevents us from delegating tasks, overburdens us, and leads to burnout. Or the painful intrinsic belief of not being worthy of love, happiness, or abundance, which leads us to push away loved ones, refuse opportunities, or create situations that, strangely, confirm this limiting belief, closing the cycle. Just as the instinct to build is innate to the beaver, our emotional instincts, our crystallized thought patterns, and our behavioral reactions lead us to act in certain ways. If these patterns have been shaped and reinforced by deep fears, chronic insecurities, or unresolved past traumas, they can lead us to build psychological barriers that, paradoxically, instead of protecting us, imprison us and prevent us from progressing. Chronic procrastination, self-sabotage in relationships, financial self-sabotage, impulsive, and irresponsible spending that destroys a carefully crafted plan. All are insidious forms of flooding caused by our own internal dams. The beauty and potency of this connection are empathetic because they allow us to perceive that self-sabotage is not a character flaw or an inherent moral failing, but rather a complex and often instinctive behavior that has become dysregulated. Just as the beaver is not bad or stupid for causing floods, we are not weak or incapable for self-sabotaging. It is a manifestation of defense mechanisms that, at some point in our history, were essential for our survival or protection, but which, in the present, have become obsolete and limiting. Understanding this deep connection helps us to look at our own self-destructive behaviors with a lens of greater compassion, less judgment, and more curiosity, thus opening the fundamental path to change and the free flow of life. To unravel the intricate mechanisms of human self-sabotage at a deeper level, it's imperative to delve into the realms of cognitive psychology, psychodynamics, and neuroscience. While the beaver primarily operates by innate, pre-programmed instinct, the human being is an infinitely complex tangle of elaborate cognition, multifaceted emotion, and unique life experiences. Self-sabotage, far from being a mere whim or a character flaw, is a behavior with deeply rooted and well-defined psychological and neurological foundations. One of the most robust and widely accepted perspectives in psychology is that self-sabotage frequently emerges from limiting beliefs and maladaptive schemas that have been constructed and reinforced throughout life, especially during the most formative phases of childhood and adolescence. If a child grows up in an environment where they receive direct or indirect messages that they are not good enough, that they don't deserve good things, that success is dangerous, or that they are not loved unconditionally, these messages can be internalized at a profound level. They transform into unconscious programs that operates silently behind the scenes of the mind in adulthood. The brain, in its inherent search for coherence and validation of these internalized beliefs, can subtly lead us to create situations that repeatedly confirm them, even if they are painful and contradictory to our conscious goals. For example, if you hold a core belief that every good relationship ends badly, it's likely that, unconsciously, you might start identifying flaws where there are none, provoking insignificant arguments or sabotaging intimacy to validate this self-fulfilling prophecy. Another significant psychological factor is the fear of success, a paradox many people find hard to grasp. For a surprising number of individuals, success isn't just glory. It brings with it a tremendous burden of pressure and expectation. The paralyzing fear of not being able to maintain the new level of performance, the anxiety of being in the spotlight or losing privacy. Success can signify a drastic break from the comfort zone, no matter how uncomfortable that previous zone was. The human brain, fundamentally programmed to seek predictability, security, and avoid pain, can paradoxically prefer the familiar to the vast and uncertain territory of triumph. Studies in social and organizational psychology have shown that individuals with low self-esteem or those who identify with the imposter syndrome might feel more comfortable in less prominent positions, and when confronted with impending success, may unconsciously self-sabotage to return to a state that is more familiar and therefore perceived as safer. Chronic procrastination, one of the most ubiquitous and insidious forms of self-sabotage, can be explained not only by task aversion itself, but also by the fear of failure. When a task seems too large, difficult, unpleasant, or daunting, the brain immediately seeks short-term rewards, such as distraction, thereby postponing the anxiety-inducing task. This provides temporary, ephemeral relief from tension, but in the long run, it leads to an overwhelming accumulation of stress, missed deadlines, and consequently, harms the greater objective. From the perspective of evolutionary biology and neurobiology, while there isn't a psychology of the beaver in the human sense, we can draw interesting parallels in feedback mechanisms and homeostasis. The beaver, in its biological programming, builds until certain environmental parameters are met: a safe water level, a well-protected lodge. If for some reason these parameters are not optimally regulated, the instinctive behavior may continue beyond the point of optimal benefit, resulting in environmental harm. In humans, our emotional and cognitive parameters can be dysregulated by unprocessed traumas, chronic stress, neurochemical imbalances, or negative thought patterns. This can lead us to behaviors that aim for a dysfunctional homeostasis that is maintaining a familiar state, because it's what the system knows rather than seeking a new balance that represents growth and well-being. In summary, self-sabotage is not an unfathomable mystery or a curse. It is, instead, a complex and multifaceted interplay of internalized beliefs, unconscious fears, psychological defense mechanisms, and sometimes a brain reward system that seeks immediate gratification at the expense of long-term well-being. While these mechanisms might have served a protective purpose at some point in our history, today they have become the barriers that prevent us from building and enjoying the full and abundant life we desire. Recognizing these unconscious foundations is the first and most crucial step to dismantling the dam that prevents us from flowing freely. The theory and science of self-sabotage truly come alive and become palpable when we observe them in action in our daily lives. Self-sabotage, like the beaver's dam that unintentionally floods and harms its own home, manifests in countless everyday situations, often cunningly disguised as bad luck, misfortune, or it just wasn't meant to be. Let's delve into some mini-stories and hypothetical cases that clearly illustrate how this dynamic subtly operates in our lives, generating frustration and stagnation. 1. The case of Anna and the career ascent. Anna had always harbored the burning dream of becoming a renowned graphic designer. With years of dedication, she honed her skills, built a truly impressive portfolio, and finally secured a coveted interview for her dream company, a market leader. In the week leading up to the big day, instead of resting reviewing her portfolio and mentally preparing, Anna inexplicably overloaded herself with extra projects from old clients. Slept very little, and on the eve of the interview had a heated and unnecessary argument with her boyfriend over a trivial matter. Consequently, she arrived at the interview exhausted, with deep dark circles under her eyes, visibly stressed, and with her motivation in tatters. She didn't get the job. Anna, acting like the beaver that builds too much and floods its own vital space, unconsciously created the perfect conditions for her own failure, despite possessing all the talent and qualifications for success. She self-sabotaged her own ascent. 2. Pedro's chronic procrastination. Pedro had an absolutely crucial deadline to submit a strategic report that would, without a doubt, define his long-awaited promotion to a leadership position. He was fully aware of the vital importance of this task, but day after day, he found the most varied excuses to postpone it. I still have plenty of time. I need to organize my desk before I start. I'll just check social media for a minute. As the final deadline approached, Pedro's anxiety escalated to unbearable levels, and he ended up submitting a mediocre, rushed job, lacking the expected quality. The promotion slipped through his fingers. His dam of distractions, postponements, and justifications, built to avoid the discomfort and pressure of facing the task, ended up flooding and blocking his own path to professional advancement. 3. Sophia's destructive relationship cycle. Sophia was a charming woman who always attracted wonderful and promising partners. However, her relationships, without exception, never lasted. Whenever intimacy began to deepen and the relationship became more serious, Sophia almost predictably found a flaw in her partner, created arguments over trivial and insignificant matters, or began to emotionally withdraw, building invisible walls between them. She carried a deep, unconscious fear of being abandoned or suffering, and her damned self-protection led her to sabotage happiness and emotional stability before it could even be lost. She, like the beaver, preemptively destroyed what she had built with so much effort, in the futile attempt to avoid future pain, but ironically ended up causing present pain. 4. Carlos's self-destructive diet. Carlos was absolutely determined to lose weight and adopt a healthier lifestyle. He started his diet and exercise regimen with contagious enthusiasm. However, whenever he achieved a small, well-deserved success like losing a few pounds or completing a full week of workouts, he would reward himself with an exaggerated and unregulated meal, or simply skip the gym for days on end, losing all momentum. He built his progress with dedication, but at the same time created the perfect conditions for regression and stagnation. His self-sabotage was a vicious cycle of advance and retreat, an invisible dam that prevented the continuous flow of his own well-being and health. These stories, though hypothetical, deeply resonate with real experiences that many of us have lived through or witnessed. They show us that self-sabotage is not an isolated, random event, but rather a recurring behavioral pattern. It is the dam we build brick by brick with our deepest fears, our latent insecurities, and our limiting beliefs, which, instead of protecting and propelling us, ends up trapping us and preventing us from swimming freely toward our most desired goals. Recognizing these patterns in ourselves and others is the crucial first step to diverting the course of this internal flooding and, finally, allowing life and our dreams to flow unimpeded. The profound journey into the fascinating world of the beaver and its paradoxical destructive dam offers us a unique and revealing lens through which to observe, understand, and ultimately transform human self-sabotage. If an animal, in its purest and most primordial instinct, can inadvertently harm its own habitat and way of life, what can be said of us, human beings, with our complexity of thoughts, emotions, and capacity for choice. The greatest and most potent lesson we can extract from this analogy is that self-sabotage should not be seen as a moral failing, a character flaw, or an inherent weakness. On the contrary, it is frequently a complex behavior that arises from a deeply distorted positive intention, that of protecting ourselves from future pains, unknown risks, or challenges, perceived as threatening, even if that protection manifests in an erroneous and self-destructive way. The first and most vital reflection this analogy prompts us towards is awareness. Just as the beaver in its incessant building task doesn't perceive the flooding and its damage until it becomes significant and visible, we too often remain blind to our own self-sabotage patterns until they cause a considerable and painful impact on our lives, preventing us from achieving happiness or success. The act of observing oneself without judgment, of actively noticing the moments when we stop ourselves from moving forward, when we make excuses or procrastinate, when we retreat in the face of an opportunity, this is the essential starting point for change. Ask yourself with honesty and curiosity, in what areas of my life am I building an invisible dam that prevents me from flowing freely toward my goals? What are the branches and stones I am adding to this dam? Secondly, the powerful analogy of the beaver invites us to deep understanding and self-compassion. The beaver is not guilty or ill-intentioned for building excessively. It is simply following its biological program, its instinct. Similarly, our self-sabotaging behaviors do not arise out of nowhere. They are for the most part direct reflections of old fears, of unprocessed emotional traumas, of deep insecurities, or of limiting beliefs that have been absorbed and internalized throughout our history. Instead of mercilessly criticizing ourselves for these patterns, blaming ourselves, or falling into the trap of guilt, we can approach them with genuine curiosity and kindness, seeking to understand the root of their existence. The big question here is, what pain or threat is this dam unconsciously trying to protect me from? What is the fear behind this self-destructive behavior? The third and fundamental lesson is about the human capacity for adaptation, flexibility, and free will. Unlike the beaver, which is primarily guided by instincts, we, as human beings, possess the capacity for self-awareness, for continuous learning, and, most importantly, the capacity for conscious choice and deliberate change. Once we identify and understand the mechanics of self-sabotage in our lives, we can and should begin to divert the course of this dam, directing our constructive energy toward healthier and more productive paths. This process may involve a series of conscious actions, actively recognizing and challenging limiting beliefs, identifying the inner voices that whisper, "You are not capable," "You don't deserve it," or "This is too good to be true," and consciously questioning their validity. This involves replacing negative thoughts with more realistic and positive affirmations, developing robust and realistic self-confidence, starting with small steps and celebrating every small victory and every progress made. Every success, no matter how small, is a brick in building a solid belief in our own capabilities. Practicing active self-compassion, treating ourselves with the same kindness, understanding, and patience we would show to a dear friend or loved one who's going through the same difficulty. This means accepting imperfections and learning from mistakes without excessive self-punishment. Seeking professional support and guidance, talking to a qualified therapist, a life coach, a mentor, or even a trusted friend can offer new perspectives, valuable insights, and effective strategies to dismantle self-destructive patterns and build new paths. External help can be the engineer who helps us redesign our dam. Setting clear boundaries, learning to say no to excesses that lead to exhaustion and, consequently, to self-sabotage. Cultivating patience and persistence. Changing ingrained self-sabotage patterns is not an instantaneous process. It is a continuous journey that requires patience, persistence, and an unwavering commitment to self-knowledge. The beaver's story, in its simplicity and depth, is a stark reminder that the energy of construction, creation, and goal pursuit is an inherent force within human beings. When this energy is consciously directed with awareness and balance, it can truly create wonders in our lives, transforming dreams into reality. However, when this same energy is dysregulated, operating on autopilot or under the influence of unconscious fears, it can become a trap, imprisoning us in cycles of frustration. Self-sabotage doesn't have to be a sentence or an immutable destiny. It is, in fact, a powerful invitation to deeper self-knowledge, to a sincere reevaluation of our own life projects, and to the construction of an existence that truly serves us, fulfills us, and flows without the painful and unnecessary flooding caused by our own hands. May we learn from the paradoxical wisdom of the beaver and build dams that protect and serve us, but also allow the free and abundant flow of life. Self-sabotage, much like the beaver's formidable dam, is our own creation, woven by our experiences and fears. It possesses the dual capacity to protect us and, paradoxically, to imprison us, hindering our own flourishing. May the story of this small, tireless engineer of nature serve as a powerful mirror, inspiring us to look inward with courage and honesty. May it empower us to recognize the invisible walls we sometimes erect in our own path and to find the strength to divert their course, allowing life and our most audacious dreams to finally flow freely and without impediment. What dam are you ready to dismantle today so that your true journey can finally set sail?